Hello everybody, welcome back as ever to Just the Basics, here with Factorio, where we're just gonna walk through and figure out how everything works, especially now that things have changed up quite a bit with the new version that we're now running. And I have been burning through a bunch of different researches, and there's even a few here that actually didn't exist when we started playing this particular save. So for instance, belt immunity equipment didn't exist. Actually, kind of not sure why you'd use that under most circumstances, because that's actually kind of handy a lot of the time. But nonetheless, there it is. And picked up a bunch of modular armor stuff. It's not dreadfully useful to us because a lot of it requires more on the side of oil. But oil is actually the main thing that we're concerned about for today, because we did just get a fresh batch into our storage over here. We're creating a bunch more red circuits. That's got things moving along quite happily. But there is, in fact, a problem up at our persistently beleaguered, but nonetheless effective, oil refinery. Because if we head on over there, I've already done a little bit of work up here just to make sure that we actually have it functioning at all right now. But if we come up here, and it's not that far of a jaunt, especially in the buggy, which runs much faster than the tank. But here we are. So, what happens up here is that we have our inputs of pure oil, nothing else coming in just right now, and it gets broken down into three materials: heavy oil, light oil, and the petroleum gas that we seek so desperately. And what can I just swiftly... Yeah, let's go with concrete. Concrete's helpful. And there's, like, different rates and different productions on all of these. If we go up here, we can just about see exactly what the production rate is. So, basic oil processing gives us 45 petroleum gas, but it also gives us a bunch of heavy oil and a bunch of light oil. And we can just about see exactly what the rates are. Interesting, it no longer shows what the rates are of the different ones. Curious indeed. Does that mean this is only producing one? But if that's only producing one, how are we getting more stuff into here? Interesting. I'm guessing it's just that we're sucking it all out of there fast enough that it's not actually even reading. We do appear to have a power supply issue there as well. Ooh. But I digress. So, the problem is that because of the different rates, we're producing a lot of heavy oil that we're not actually able to use right now for anything, and we are using the light oil to make our solid fuel up here, which we're actually using for the powering of a bunch of things. And let's just top up this train, which probably doesn't need very much because it barely ever moves, but nonetheless we can top up the buggy, I guess, or the tank or something. You know, we can put these things to use. We could start turning that into solid fuel, well, into rocket fuel if we combine that with more light oil, which is another way that we can potentially sink our light oil. We can also break down the light oil into petroleum gas, which would allow us to make more petroleum gas out of what we're currently getting with our oil. Our oil is still very little, and I don't see an end to that in the near future. I have tried to, like, explore with the tank, and there's just nothing to be found, so it might well be late game by the time we actually find a meaningful deposit of oil. So we're just gonna have to deal with that. But, much as we can crack light oil down to petroleum gas, we can also crack heavy oil down to light oil. And that's what we're going to be trying to do today. We do have a problem there, which is the fact that we don't really have water nearby here, so we're going to have to try and find ourselves a tap that we can use. And I'm probably going to try going up here. There's not really much going on up here, so it should be okay. I could theoretically put a pump way over here and bring that over here, but of course we can see there's more enemies in that area than we really want to be dealing with. Water pumps don't really tend to gather that much attention, but, you know, just in case. Just in case. And this is going to require, I think, more refineries? Nope, it is going to require more chemical plants. But that's fine, we can manage that, they don't take red circuits. So, how much are we producing of the different fluids currently? We're producing 155 petroleum gas, we're not producing any additional heavy oil. I'm very curious what's going on with that, because we've definitely been producing it before. So, whereas advanced oil processing produces it. Interesting, so basic oil processing only produces petroleum gas. but not as much as advanced oil processing, which requires water. But that is an interesting change, because it used to be both of these would produce all three, just at different rates. Huh. How very curious indeed. Well, if we get water up to here, then we might as well switch this over to the advanced model anyways, so there is that. Our power is at 36 megawatts and struggling. Let's have a look at it. Where are you? I mean, they're all perfectly coming along, so we might just have to start mirroring this and actually creating more power. But let's worry about that at a different time, one thing at a time here. So, if we want to try and break our backlog here of our storage tanks of light oil into more petroleum gas, we're going to start needing to have access to more of these. So let's just put 10 of those on the listing. And I don't know. Yeah, there we go. Just wondering if I had any around. Okay, so we grab that, and then what we want to do is more or less essentially just hook these into, instead of going directly into solid fuel, we can also hook them into our petroleum gas. And if we use a pump, like this one over here, we can actually control that via circuit conditions so that if the petroleum gas has less in storage than the light oil, then the light oil will start to get pumped and changed back into petroleum gas. So to that end, I'm going to need enough space there to actually accommodate a pump as well as a line. And we are going to need access for water, so we need to bear that in mind. And let's just plug that a little bit further away. Okay, so there's a start. Grab that there. And let's see, let's have our water coming in a little weirdly here. So we want 2 lines there, and that's going to be a bit of a problem. It would have been preferable if it had decided to be on the top, but oh well, that's fine. These are things that you tinker around with and discover a lot. Okay, and there we go, starting up a little bit. So now we just need to get water into here. Ooh. So that's going to be the slightly more difficult problem, and we haven't wired this up yet, so there's no notion yet of whether or not we should be pumping stuff into here to convert it back into petroleum gas, but it's a start. So let's grab ourselves an offshore pump. Concrete is finished. Let's stick... Don't know that we actually have that running right now, but it will be very useful in very short order, so let's try and see how far it goes. I've only got 44 undergrounds on me, so I don't know how far this will go. But we do already have a line up here, so we might as well make use of it. And I have done a little bit more clearing just by driving through here with the tank. Just need to be a little bit careful of where I steer. Now, it's worth noting that there really isn't much in the way of fluid dynamics inside of Factorio. One particular spot of water is not going to be any more useful to you than any other. It's just a matter of which is closest and more convenient. So, you can go pretty much wherever you like. Except for right there, where I've parked my car. Oh, and we did actually manage to get through robotics, so the thing that gets really important with robotics is it gives us access to a number of things, the utility science pack for instance, as well as the logistics robots down the line. The most important thing, however, that it can give us is the construction robots, because these will make it much faster to lay out things as well as to deconstruct and overhaul them. And also eventually gives us access to the personal roboports, which allows us to walk around and have them do things for us just wherever we are, just by having them inside of our inventory. The logistics robots, on the other hand, are more interested in inventories, so chests and such, and they will collect items, place items in other chests, and you can use that to automate without necessarily having to run big, long conveyor belts and such. Which makes them very handy for things like the mall, but by and large, they're not nearly as helpful as the construction robots, because the construction robots can also repair structures that are being damaged, which lets you make actual healing walls, essentially, when you're trying to build up defenses. Now, I'm unfortunately a little bit out of materials here, and I left the car at the top end of this. I got so close as well. Ugh, okay. Well, I'll lay a couple more here, and we can actually then just grab some more from the mall, probably. But it is worth noting, just while I'm doing this, that the pumps for water don't really generate any pollution. The actual undergrounds don't actually produce any pollution at all. So as a consequence, the aliens tend to ignore them unless they run directly into them. Which is why we're using undergrounds here, because it's greatly reduces the amount of contact that the aliens can physically have with the lines, and therefore makes them more or less invulnerable. Because nobody's attacking them, which is totally the definition of invulnerable. Okay, water has now reached our little refinery. So we want to bring it into here so we can actually connect it into that slot. And that's not too much of a bother. We just have to be careful that we don't run it into anything else. Fortunately, when it comes to being careful where things are going, the undergrounds are significantly more restrictive than the regular pipes, because the undergrounds only take input or output from one side. In this case, it's this side and that side. So you can use them as a sort of a one-way street, as it were. One little isolated street. In the same way there, I'm avoiding this from hooking into the heavy oil. Okay, and now we have things actually running, making petroleum gas. Grand. So we can just take it over like that, and shove that into there. And just hook all these together. And that will give us a bunch more petroleum gas. So there's our production of it. We go for the last minute. We should see that climb as our petroleum gas begins to sink. Yep, 9.5, 9.4. This is not going to be the fastest thing in the world, but nonetheless, we're going to try. So let's see. This takes 2 units to actually finish. It has a crafting speed of 1, so that's 2 seconds. Every time it does that, it produces 20. So every 2 seconds it produces 20, so every 1 second it produces 10. So we're producing an extra 50 units of petroleum gas right now every second. As opposed to what we had before, which was not very much, suffice to say. But yeah, that does look to be on the climb, which means that we should be filling this up just a little bit faster. Just a little bit faster. And that's what we want. So the next thing, of course, we want to do is break down the heavy oil into light oil, because we're also not using that for anything. And we just have a kind of a bulk back here. I added a couple more storage tanks here just to get the system running, because when the liquids have nowhere to go, much like the items, they completely shut down and stop producing. So when we filled up on our heavy oil or our light oil, our petroleum gas stopped working. Obviously, that's less of a concern right now that we're no longer actually producing either of these things, but if we plan to switch this over to actually making use of the advanced processing, which is quite probable, because it produces more petroleum gas, and hey, that's good when you don't have very much oil, then we are going to want to have that as a consideration. So let's set one up for this as well. Now, of course, we are going to eventually run out of these because we're not currently producing them. That will change in short order. So 9.6, 9.7, our light oil is climbing because we are getting more of it out of our heavy oil than we are processing. And why do I only see... Ah, because I haven't hooked all of these in. Just saying, why do I only see one of these working right now? Why does only one of them have that big plume above it? So now it should be working a little bit faster. And it'd be a bit more noticeable over here. Oh yeah, there we go. That's much better. Look at that. Yeah, we are definitely climbing on that. Grand, okay. So now we hook this up for water so it can actually start making the better sauce, and we can get this actually pumping out quite a bit faster. So let me just switch you over to that. Now you're going to be asking for me for water, but you're also going to be producing everything exactly where we left it. Can't mix? Even you can't mix. Oh, because you've got something there. I think that's the problem. That's presumably the problem. There you go. And now we just need to figure out getting water into here, which, again, not a huge problem. Once you learn more or less this trick up here, and then this trick down here, you can more or less get whatever you need, wherever you need it. It's just a matter of making sure everything is where it should be. And there we have it. All the heavy burning. Nice. And that's going to also mean that we're producing more petroleum gas, and we're also producing light oil and heavy oil, which are now being broken down into petroleum gas. So every last drop of oil that we have is being efficiently broken down into more petroleum gas, and that will hopefully mean that it doesn't take half an hour for us to actually get this going. Hopefully. The calculator is not really set up for doing these calculations, so it's going to take me a little bit to put the numbers together, but I will hopefully be able to have that put forward for everybody in the next episode. Yeah, I've said this like a dozen times by this point. I've moaned about this forever, but I don't know why we have so little oil on this map. It's a normal map. There's not really anything special to it. It's just for some reason we don't have any oil. We have the very scant, like, sections of oil. Generally speaking, ores are meant to become larger and more bountiful the further out you go, and we've seen that happen with other ores that we found, but for whatever reason, it has not been the case for oil so far. So, we just have to find ways around that, and that starts with efficiency. But, with that in mind, I hope you've all enjoyed, and we'll catch you all as ever in the next episode. Bye!